So, yeah, welcome here. And this is an introduction to my training, our journey here. And, I do want to offer a little bit of a class today. And then, so I'll offer some information and then I'll talk about the training, some specifics in the training and how to apply for it. If you're not here because you want to do the training or plan to do the training, I think you'll still get something out of this. That's my intention. So, yeah, and I'm just appreciating, actually, quite a few people signed up for this and people from all over the world. And even with the little group that's here so far, we're kind of spread out. Um, so I love that about working online. And, people have asked me, it's like, well, how do you do a pre and perinatal training or pre and perinatal work online? How can that work? But it does. Hello, welcome. Um, so I'd like to give you a taste today also of how that can work and how we can connect with each other, even if we're working online. And the training itself is limited to 12 participants. So, it's quite intimate. It's looking like today might end up being like that too. I don't know. But part of what we practice in the training is being with the unknown, right? Those of you who are practitioners, you never know what's going to show up. And how can we be present with that? So that's kind of the foundation of the work is how can we be present with what presents and how can we welcome it? We work with a series of principles that were developed by my dear mentor, Ray Castellino. And these Ray, dear Ray. And these principles are, hello, welcome. These principles are all designed to establish and maintain safety. And, we now know from modern trauma work that that's the first step in working with trauma. We used to believe that you just dive into it and cathartic it all and, at some point it all be done. But that doesn't necessarily help all that much. But what does help is to stabilize the system, help the system to experience, to perceive safety, for the nervous system to have a sense of safety. And so it's really important to create that in doing this work, but also that's what little ones need, when we first come into life, even at conception, we need to have a sense of being welcomed. And that is safety for the little one. When we're completely dependent on our parents for our survival, we need to be welcomed, right? If we're not welcomed, it doesn't feel safe. And various things contribute to that experience, to the ability of the parents to welcome a new child. And so maybe I'll just say this at the outset, that unfortunately, I learned the hard way through, I've been passionate about pre and perinatal psychology for many years, since the 90s. Was that 30 something years? I could feel old really easily when I think about this. I don't, but I could. But I was just so passionate about it, and I would tell everybody about what I was learning. And then I found people going into being really angry that I was blaming them or blaming their parents. And it never occurred to me that anybody was doing anything wrong. That's not the way I think. It's not about that for me. I actually think, believe it or not, I do believe all our parents do their best. And sometimes that best isn't very good for us, but it depends on how much support they have and their own trauma history and how much they've again, had support to resolve. And I know, when I was born, my parents' generation, they didn't do trauma work, you know, they made money. They did what they needed to do to survive, and certainly their parents, even more so. Um, so it was a bit of a mess coming in for my generation. And I think things have improved a bit, but there's still so much, to me, an incredible amount of ignorance about how aware and sensitive little ones are from the very beginning. Every cell has sensitivity. If a cell is in, they've done experiments where cells in a solution, if you add some toxin to the solution, the cells withdraw, right? That's intelligent, responsive behavior. And we begin as a unicellular organism, right? Of course, we're affected by what's around us. And yet there's so much ignorance about that and denial about that. You may not know, my most recent book, my newest book, which is coming out in March next year, is called Birth as Shadow, because it seems to me that our pre and perinatal experience is almost by definition unconscious shadow material, because mostly nobody acknowledges it or reflects it back. When little toddlers start talking about how it was at birth or in the womb, people go, "Oh, isn't that cute?" Or they distract them with something, or they talk about something else, or they say, "Don't talk such nonsense." Right? I think that's starting to change a little bit here and there. And of course, that it's not always like that. And it's different in some other cultures. Um, but for the most part, there's a huge amount of just ignorance and denial about that time. And so we don't have a chance to bring it into conscious awareness, and conscious memory doesn't get integrated, which means that because our bodies, the cells have experienced it and they're remembering. So we're just acting it out all the time. So I'm on a mission to change that. And welcome. And I appreciate you joining me. Um, I hope you join the mission. So what I thought we'd do in this little class is take a little time to I'd like to guide you through a meditative settling, which is how I tend to start everything. And partly that's because little ones function at a much slower speed than we do as adults. And to meet this material and to meet little ones, or to meet each other engaging in that material, we need to slow down. And we live in an incredibly sped up world. Have you noticed that? Some of you might feel a bit sped up trying to, get to the meeting. So, Zoom can have that effect. So I'd like to start by guiding you through some settling. And then I have a PowerPoint with some information. And then we'll have some time for questions and discussion. How's that sound? And that kind of thing happens a lot in the classes, in the training also, although there's also doing practice sessions with each other in the training. But I'll talk more about that later. For now, let's take a little time to just start to settle ourselves. Whatever that means to you, I suggest starting with being curious about what's present for you as we're beginning. And so there may be some thoughts or feelings about things that I've said already. or your day up to this point, or anticipation about what's coming after this and the rest of your day. And just being aware what's there. Being curious about what you're aware of in your body. Can you feel your body? Can you feel your feet? And if it's hard to feel your feet, you might want to press them into the floor a little bit to engage the muscles so you can feel them a bit more. Feel your legs. You feel the weight of your body resting into the support under you. Mama Earth holding us in her lap. Can we allow ourselves to rest into that support? And I invite you to be curious. In the training, we look at everything as potentially being information. And we practice being curious about whatever arises, what's present, welcoming that. And our birth experience tends to be reflected in how we begin new things in our lives, how we do transitions. And just now we're beginning a class. And for some of you, perhaps this is the beginning of the training for you. So being curious how you arrive here today, could that in any way reflect how you arrived here into life? And you may not have an answer to that. You know, there's the idea of living a question rather than trying to answer it. The question can guide us. How might this moment echo my very early experience? And so, for example, if you're having trouble feeling your feet, that might reflect how it was when you came in. And there might have been some drugs involved in the birth that reduced sensation. There might have been some challenges, overwhelm, that made it difficult to stay in the body. And that might be reflected in this time. But we also have the ability at this time to resource ourselves, to help ourselves to be in present time, to be in our bodies, to meet the support under us. But if that's difficult, that's not something bad and wrong, it's just what is information. So noticing how it is to just be with your experience in this moment. And what supports you in being able to be with it a bit more or to rest a bit more into this moment? What's resourcing or supportive for you? And again, that may be the feeling of your feet, your legs, gravity under you, might be your breath. It might be the thought or memory of someone or something that has been supportive for you in your life, helps you know you're okay. It's noticing what happens. Does anything change when you let yourself orient to resource, to what supports you? And again, that could be anything. It could be, I'm noticing the plants behind me. It could be plants or something in your room that you love or like. It could be a place in nature. It could be something you like to do or an object that you own or a practice you have, like if you have a meditation practice, for example, or do yoga or something like that, or a sport. Could be anything at all. What supports you? And what happens with your sense of arriving and settling as you remind yourself of what supports you? Little ones aren't able to do that on their own. They need someone to help them to settle, to regulate their nervous system. Something that we practice a lot in the training is remembering our current age as the adults that we are. So remembering what age you are today, May 21st, 2024. For those of you who are here live, what happens when you acknowledge your current age and all that you're able to do now that you couldn't do back then when you were little? Even if your life isn't perfect, and I don't know anyone who actually feels their life is perfect all the time. Maybe you do, but um, there are still like so many ways that you are able to function and meet circumstances now that you couldn't back then. Even finding your way to a Zoom meeting. Or brushing your teeth in the morning. What happens with your sense of settling just now with that? Before we come back together, I'd like to invite you to, feels right, to put a hand over your heart and take a little time to let yourself be aware of heart. How does it feel to have your hand there? You might feel the heart beating, or you might feel something else. You may have a sense of the breath moving in and out of that area under your hand. And research actually shows that just thinking of making contact with the heart in this way and also thinking of breathing in and out of the heart can help us to settle more, can increase the coherence of the heart rhythms, which actually increases the coherence of everything within us. So how is it to have an intention just now to rest in the heart? And we can rest here with an intention of unconditional acceptance, welcome being, just being. Just noticing how that is for you just now. And as we prepare to come back together in our group, I invite you to let your bodies move and stretch gently any way that feels good to you. Are you feeling that you can move however you want? And I encourage you to do so throughout the class. And then if your eyes are closed, gently letting yourself open them and looking around the room that you're in, seeing where you are. What do you see in this room? Can you feel your head turning as you look? And slowly looking to the left, to the right, up at the ceiling. If you can, turn and look behind you, see what's there. This is also letting your nervous system know that you're safe where you are. And then as you're ready, as you're able and willing, letting your awareness include the part of your room that's on the screen. And not sure what you're seeing. You're welcome to, you may want to change your view to gallery view so that you can see the group here. And something we do a lot in the class is we make connection. You know, if we were in a group in person, we would be probably sitting in a circle and I would invite you to make some eye contact with each other. And that's tricky with a group online. You could do it kind of with one person, but it's hard to do on with a group. But what we find is we can make, I call it heart connection. What we do is we make a slow wave like this, which is like inviting connection or saying, I want some contact. And what I like to do is to look at each person for a moment and welcome that person. Feel some welcome for that person. And then move to another one. Feel some welcome for them. And know that as you're doing this, probably there's at least one person welcoming you as well. Well, you can know that I'm welcoming you, nobody else, but I don't imagine I'm the only one. Notice how it feels to be connecting with that sense or intention of welcome. And with the new Zoom updates, of course, it wants to pick up our hands and show a hand up, so we can ignore that. So, wow, welcome here. That's how we tend to begin classes. I'm wondering how that is for you or how that was for you. If you'd like to say something, there aren't too many people on the screen, so you could just raise your hand and say something, unmute yourself, say something, or you can put it in the chat box. If you put something in the chat box, in an attempt to maintain some degree of confidentiality, I will read it, but I won't say who said it. So you can make a choice there. But I'd love to know how it is for you. How are you as you're arriving? Do you feel any different than you did when you first came? Did you get any clues about your beginning back then from how you arrived here? Or did you enjoy anything? Does anybody feel more settled now than you did when we started? Okay, few people admitting it. Anything else? Maybe a word in the chat box for how you are? And just to say is waiting, hopefully some words to come. You are welcome to do that wave at any time during the class. If you feel like it would be helpful or you would just like some contact, you can do that. When I'm showing the PowerPoint, I might not be able to see it. Others might not be able to see it. But one of the things that we work with in this work, again, coming from Ray Castellino, is pausing as necessary. If I try to go slowly because little ones process things slowly. When we talk about this material, we tend to need it to go slowly. But if something feels like it's starting to go too fast for you, or like you could really use some extra time to integrate it or some support, please ask for a pause. And you could put some pause maybe in big letters in the chat box. You could try raising a hand. I might not see it if it's in the PowerPoint. Or you can unmute and say, could we have a pause, please? Okay, and I will honor that. And I usually pause once in a while too. And thank you. I see one word in the chat box, which is present. It seems like a good place to be. Not to have any judgments, of course, but present. I like being present. It can be helpful. Thank you. Comment. Awareness of tears coming at such opportunities. Mama Earth holding us in her lap is a powerful phrase. Yeah. Feeling softer now, less hard, held in a hard way. Yeah, I saw the tears, was feeling that. And yeah, for me, it's a powerful metaphor, image of Mama Earth holding us. And I actually believe that the way we as humans have been treating Mama Earth may very well relate to the way we were treated, coming in, and our relationship with Mama back then. And that can change. What was it Peter Levine says, our trauma doesn't have to be a life sentence, I think is how he says it. Yeah. It's just what happened. And it's our relationship to it, which can change. So yeah, thank you for the comment. And I'm glad you're feeling softer now, too. I'm taking a breath. You feel ready to look at some images and hear a bit? I'm going to share my screen. So you should be able to see that now. Can you see that? Yeah. This should look familiar. This was what the advertising was with. I love this image though. That's support. That little one getting to hold a finger. If you've ever had a little one hold your finger, it's usually supportive for us adults too. It's the sweetest thing in the world, pretty much. So that's what we're aiming for. I'm going to move to the next slide. And what I'd like to do is just offer kind of a brief overview of some of what is or can be there in pre and perinatal work. And one of the things I like to look at, part of my background is as an occupational therapist, where I learned about developmental milestones, which of course was from birth on. But what I've seen in studying embryology and prenatal psychology is that we have some important developmental milestones before birth as well. And so I find it helpful to remember that every step of development involves meeting a challenge. And that's true certainly from conception on, maybe even before conception. But as we meet a challenge, we need to have enough resource to meet it. If we don't, we're overwhelmed. And that's where trauma comes from. So developmental milestones begin before conception. And so, think about the sperm and the egg go through development before they come together. They're going through a lot. And it seems that there's a third something that comes in at conception, call it the being or the soul, the spirit, whatever you call it. Many people have memories or experiences that seem like memories to them of coming in at conception and what that was like. And that's not always easy. So the thing to remember is that even if it was very challenging back then, we've already survived those challenges. Okay? We are here to tell the tale or discover the tale, as the case may be. Okay? But if we lacked resource, they've left their mark. We call that trauma. And that can affect our psychological tendencies throughout life. So relational tendencies, how we do relationship, our sense of self, feeling of confidence, for example, or not. Our core beliefs, the world is a safe place or not, right? Can affect our somatic experience and physical formation. So we tend to hold that early history in our bodies, and our posture, for example, can reflect that, or the way we use our bodies. Well, I mentioned, if we're having trouble feeling your feet, that could be an echo of birth experience, for example. And those early developmental milestones can be revisited. Partly, people are curious about them. They want to know what their history was because it's usually not in conscious memory. And as I said, it hasn't been usually acknowledged or reflected. So it may feel on one level very real, but on another level not, right? So they want it to be confirmed. But to me, what's even more important about revisiting those times is so that we can access their original potential. I talk about original embryological potential. If you think about how we start, as I said, as a unicellular organism, tiny little unicellular organism, and we develop these complex bodies, that's incredible potential. How do we do that? That's biointelligence in action, right? And we can access that potential. That potential is happening every time, we cut a finger. Have you ever watched with amazement how your finger heals when you've cut it? Like, how does it do that? It's going back to a blueprint for how we form. Okay, so we're looking at how we spiral into form. And there may be various difficult influences there, but there's also a knowing of how to do it. And we can access that again. So to me, that's really the purpose of prenatal and birth therapy. So I'll move to the next slide. And I wanted to give an example of a milestone. And what we call discovery is a very important one that affects so many people. Discovery, my other pre and perinatal mentor, William Emerson, defined discovery as the time when the pregnancy is confirmed by a test. Okay. These days, that can happen earlier, but usually that tends to be confirmed around the end of the third week, beginning of the fourth week, which is right around the time that the embryo folds or bows and the heart begins to beat. There's a heart ignition. And so where there have been challenges at a time, we tend to hold that experience in this heart chest region. And people who had a difficult time at that point are often a bit hunched over, right, protecting, or they might be doing the opposite, trying to compensate for that wanting to protect. And they kind of go like this, "Whoa, I'm here," you know. But we tend to hold that experience in this area because that was what was forming at the time. And there can be various imprints from that time. It's a common term in pre and perinatal psychology, which actually comes from what's it called? Ethology. I think that I haven't looked at this in a long time. The work with, where a duckling will follow the first moving object it sees, which might be the experimenter rather than its mother, right? That's an imprint. But what we see in pre and perinatal psychology is that our very early experiences can act like imprints on our behavior and our psychology. So from the time of discovery, it's a time when we need to be welcomed. The parents going, "We're pregnant. Wow, we did it. We have a new being coming into our family. We have, a new baby." They are celebrating, right? But that often doesn't happen. When that happens, baby feels welcome, feels safe. And yes, they can feel it at that time, even though they're, I don't know, about that big. They're tiny. There may be more of a sense of coping rather than celebration. If you think about a teenage girl who doesn't have a boyfriend, who just happened to get pregnant, whose parents absolutely don't approve and don't want her to keep the baby, and maybe she wants the baby, or maybe she doesn't. Maybe she doesn't even really know much about what's involved. Or someone who already has 7 kids and doesn't know how to feed them, and another one comes along. Or it's during a war, or, I think about, there's some major wars happening right now. And I think the one that's biggest in the news right now is in Gaza and Israel. But the war in the Ukraine is still going on. And I think about these babies coming into the world, in the midst of all that violence and terror and uncertainty, that doesn't feel safe. And what kind of resource do their parents have to support them? It's difficult. So how accepting or rejecting are the parents and the family and the extended community? That can affect the person's ability to feel welcome, to feel accepted or rejected. Some people expect to be rejected in relationships or in a group or something. And prenatal bonding is also affected. So ideally, bonding begins before conception, when the parents are preparing to welcome the child in. But if discovery is a time of, trauma for the parents, even if they come to accept the child later, it may be very difficult for them to bond with the baby. The baby represents that challenge for them. Okay. And the child probably feels rejected. And even if the parents come to accept the child may continue to feel that rejection or expected. And they actually need the parents to do repair and say to them, which can happen at any time, by the way, for any of you who are parents and relating to this, it's never too late to talk to the child and say, I'm so sorry I had a hard time when I found out you were here. And I'm so glad you're here now. So glad now that you're here. But to acknowledge what happened can be really helpful and bring it out of shadow. Okay. And that can happen even when the child's still in the womb, can happen at any time. Doing repair can be incredibly helpful. So these imprints can have an effect, not just in a negative way, but we can come back and access the potential. So with healing work, there's the potential of feeling welcomed and accepted, of experiencing love and relational presence, of coming out of hiding. So little ones who don't feel welcomed or safe around the time of discovery might spend their lives trying to stay small and not be discovered. I find that often when I'm doing supervision with new practitioners, and they have to put out a website and, let people know they exist. And they have so much trouble doing it. And often we find it goes back to this time of discovery. And if we can access the potential of that time, if we can help that person to feel welcomed, help the little one within them to feel welcome, they start to come out of hiding. And there starts to be more possibility of self-acceptance. So that's a lot of information. I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment. Make some contact. Hello out there. Everybody okay? Yeah. I just want to mention for those of you who weren't here right at the beginning that we also have Tracy here. Tracy, you want to red wave? Who's actually assisting my training. And is a wonderful practitioner of this work. So she's like an extra layer of holding here. Thank you, Tracy, for being here. It's great to see you. So you feel ready for more? Okay. So I'll go to the next slide. I wanted to just talk a little bit about what we call umbilical affect and umbilical toxicity, because there's such a huge prenatal experience. So consider that little ones in the room are receiving everything umbilically from the mother. So they're completely dependent on receiving nourishment, as well as love, welcome, and acceptance. That isn't always what's coming in. Okay. And that can create challenges. So umbilical affect, affect is a psychological term for emotion, basically. And that refers to the emotional influences of the mother. So when the emotions of the mother, the affect of the mother is coming in energetically or hormonally to affect the baby. Little ones don't differentiate between what's theirs and what's someone else's. They just experience it directly. So let's say mom is depressed or feeling really stressed. We'll say more about stress in a moment, or she's anxious, and not feeling supported enough. The hormones related to that come in umbilically, and the child marinates in that. The child is, that comes along with their nourishment. Okay, they're completely dependent on the nourishment, but they're getting this other stuff with it. And it can be toxic influence as well. Like, for example, if there's pollution, environmental toxicity or danger, I mentioned war, drought, starvation, there's all kinds of things that can be happening in the larger collective that also affect the little one. And we know that maternal stress, if it's chronic or severe, affects the little one. If it's just one stressful little event, it's not that big a deal. That might actually create resilience, develop resilience. But the baby's automatic nervous system is developing in the womb. And if the mother is experiencing severe or chronic stress, her stress hormones are communicated to the baby, especially cortisol. And the baby's system adapts. The baby is learning about the mother's world in preparation to live in that world. So the baby's nervous system is learning, or even before they have a nervous system, they're learning that the mother's world is stressful. And they're adapting to that. So they become extra sensitive to stress and tend to have altered levels of cortisol themselves as throughout their lives. There can also be things like relational disharmony, so problems with the partner, family, work colleagues, those create stress as well. All those things can be very negative or toxic for the baby. And it creates a double bind. You know the term double bind? It's like, pardon my language, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, right? There is no satisfying solution. So for the baby, completely dependent for nourishment on what's coming in umbilically, if their food is coming in accompanied by toxicity or these negative feelings or something, they want to push that away. They want to avoid that. But if they do that, they don't get the food they need, right? So there's no solution to the problem. Babies have actually been seen to try and squeeze the umbilical cord to keep stuff out. But of course, they can't survive if they do that. So we tend to run into double binds everywhere in pre and perinatal work. And we work with it a lot in the training. There's a whole method of how to recognize and name and be with double binds because they can be quite challenging to be with. And they tend to be expressed in the body and in relationships. So they'll come up in, for those of you who are therapists, in the transference, for example, or the countertransference. So the relationship, the way the client perceives the therapist and the way the therapist perceives or reacts to the client can be affected by a double bind in the client's history. And since most of us have double binds in our own histories, the double bind in the client's history can resonate with our own as practitioners. So a lot of the purpose of my training actually is to help us to do our own work. That's not all we do. We learn a lot as well, but we're doing our own work as well. What I find is the more we can acknowledge and process and integrate of our own early experience, the clearer and more present we can be to support another person. Otherwise, we tend to just resonate with their stuff and it's a big mess. So I'm taking a breath with that and going to the next slide. So we do have, as I mentioned, our original potential, the blueprint. And that can be really resourcing, really helpful to remember. So this is an image that's actually in my book. Can you see the Spirit into Form? If you're not familiar with it, is actually the text for the training. And this is an image of support for the little one. Here's the little one in mom's belly. Mom, hopefully with a partner. I think that's her partner there. And other layers of support that might be community, ancestors, other layers of support there. So important. Trauma happens when there aren't adequate layers of support. I can't think of anything more important than supporting pregnant families, because that affects their little one. That will affect the future of our planet, I believe. The more support, the better. So what is the blueprint? You know the term blueprint. It's like if there's a house being built, the architect draws a blueprint, a plan for how to build it. And the construction workers, the builders, follow the blueprint, hopefully. And it turns out, the way the architect intended. So we also have a blueprint, which is more of a kind of mysterious, energetic guidance. But it seems that our development is guided by an inherent intelligence. I know some of you are biodynamic craniosacral therapists, and in biodynamics, we talk about potency. We talk about the breath of life, which is expressed in embodied form through potency. And that's like this inherent intelligence that when you cut your finger guides the healing. With enough support, little ones know how to develop. We all did it, right? If you were going to start again as a sperm and an egg, would you know how to develop this consciously? Probably not. But that inherent intelligence knows what to do. Where there are layers of support, it enables the parents to provide what is needed, because they also, on some level know what to do. We remember our potential as well as our trauma in our cells, our tissues, and our implicit memory. Therapy can provide a layer of support and teach orientation to support. Okay, it's part of what we practice, is how do we orient to what's supportive rather than just the pain, just the trauma. Okay. In our modern world, that's a paradigm shift. Do you read the news or watch the news? How much of it orients to support? Most of it orients to trauma. Right. And training can provide layers of support for the therapist. So I'd like to move on to talk about the training a bit for a few minutes. And So as I mentioned, the text for the course is my book, Spirit into Form, Exploring Embryological Potential and Prenatal Psychology. And we don't go through every chapter in the book in the course, but generally between each of the 6 seminars, there is some assigned reading, which is usually 1 or 2 chapters. And I also ask you to write a paragraph about your reading. And I usually have a question for you to answer in a paragraph about something that we covered in the seminar. So there's 6 seminars, and the first one, actually the first 2 are preconception and conception. Well, they're pre the womb, I should say. So the first one is preconception. So the sperm and the egg, what do they experience? What are they exposed to? And we, I have a somatic psychotherapy background. And I teach movement work. So we bring movement into the training as well. And we actually have some fun in the first seminar where we have some sperm movement and explore the sperm journey. It's kind of fun. And the opposite is being the egg, which is very still. So we look at the polarities. And then in seminar 2, how do they come together in conception? And the implantation is the journey to the womb before implantation, which is seminar 3, when we implant or nest in the wall of the womb. And these are also developmental milestones. And in that seminar as well, we look at umbilical affect in some detail. The next seminar, we look at discovery, which you've learned a little bit about today, and prenatal bonding. And seminar 5, we come to birth, passing through the portal, where we look at birth dynamics. And then seminar 6 is beyond the portal, birth, bonding, and beyond. So for each of those, we're looking at any relevant embryology, physical development. What are the challenges that can come up? What trauma might come up? And what's the potential? And we have experiential explorations to explore that. And in each seminar, the seminars are 3 days, so it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And in each seminar, we have a practice session, as well as usually some other experiential explorations. But the practice session is something that you do within a triad with at least one team member there to support you. I realized when I moved this to an online format that in order for it to be safe, it was really important to have a team member with each triad, because you'll be in breakout rooms. That's different from sitting in a room in person where, the team can sit there and be tracking what's going on in the whole room. You can't do that when people are in breakout rooms, or inquiry rooms, as I'm learning to call them. So you have really good support and supervision. We're not in the breakout rooms with you to criticize or, make you do anything in particular. But we're there to support you, a layer of support. Often we're just there holding the field, available if you have questions. If we see something really going off track, or it seems like you need support, we'll offer that. So what usually happens is we do some settling and some check-ins. And then I present some material, often in PowerPoint form, like today. And that introduces whatever it is we're focusing on for that seminar. There's often more than one presentation in a seminar, and there isn't just one topic. But there will be one main practice session, And as an introduction to it, I will do a demonstration session with one of the students. And then usually on the Saturday, we spend most of the day doing the practice sessions in breakout rooms. And Sunday's more of an integration day. So you have some time to integrate before going back into your life. And there may be some additional material that I present that day, but it's usually also possibly contributing to the integration. So that's the general layout. And we'll look a bit more specifically at what we're doing. So what would you learn in this training? So first of all, the foundational skills are about somatic mindful presence, deepening into that. So like the meditation that we did in the beginning is part of that. And we do a lot of somatic mindfulness kind of things. Trauma verbal skills are really essential. We're dealing with trauma. So most of these are things that I learned from the biodynamic craniosacral therapy training with my dear husband, Franklin Sills, when I was teaching with him. But also I'd learned them before that. I actually studied biodynamics with someone who had been his student, Anna Chitty, and her husband, John Chitty. And she's also an SE practitioner. I don't think she was a teacher, but she's a supervisor, I think, in that work. And she brought a lot of SE, somatic experiencing kinds of things into the training, and Franklin did as well. Apparently, Peter Levine, who develops SE, came to Karuna Institute, which Franklin and his ex-wife founded, where we taught for years together also. And so Peter gave a workshop there, and that really influenced the biodynamic training. So those of us who studied biodynamics and Franklin's form of it, I feel I've been very fortunate to learn some good trauma skills. And I've been expanding my understanding and skills in working with trauma with other people in the last several years as well. So we work with that a lot, especially the first few seminars, to have that foundation. And we're looking at, of course, what are potential traumas in prenatal development, birth, and the postpartum period, and how to meet those, how to recognize those, how to recognize pre and perinatal trauma and potential, and essential skills for meeting little ones and little one states at any time in life. So when we work with this material, people often tend to slip into being like a little one, so unable to differentiate between what's theirs and what's someone else's, or unable to differentiate between past and present. The memories from that time are implicit memory. They're nonverbal. They're in the body, emotions, and they tend to feel like they're happening now. So one of the most essential skills is to help with orienting to present time, staying resourced as the adults that we are. And that's true for us as practitioners as well as for the client. So how to support yourself as practitioner when pre and perinatal themes arrive in session work and the relational field. And how to support mindful inquiry in yourself and your clients. So in many forms of pre and perinatal work, people are guided into a particular time in prenatal development or birth, and there's a focus on just going back there, and people get lost there. And we don't work that way. We work with mindful inquiry. What is present? So as you've been hearing about all this that I've been talking about, what's present for you? when we work with that. We work with intention also. So I'm aware there's a lot here and we're getting short on time. So I'm going to take a breath and slow myself down and go to the next slide. And just to look at the specifics of what the course includes, there's 6 live interactive 3-day seminars via Zoom. And people ask me, is it okay to miss a seminar? And no, it's not, because I've tried to make this as much like an in-person training as possible. It's very experiential and very interactive. And of course, if there's some emergency, we deal with that. But I ask that people commit to being there for the whole 18 days of the training. There will be video recordings of the presentations and demonstrations from each class to go back to, and you have lifetime access to that. All the course materials are on a course page on the Resourcing Your Life website, which you've all accessed in order to get here, I think. So you can access the recordings, and there's other material that I offer as well. There are some, additional meditations and videos and things to read as well. The course includes guided experiential explorations in the triads, as I mentioned, supervised by a team member in the breakout rooms. Somatic movement explorations, sometimes within the whole group. Those can be fun and interesting. You get PDFs of the PowerPoint presentations from each class. And there's handouts and readings between each seminar and some assignments. There's not a huge amount of work, but there is some to do. And there's additional videos, recommended reading, and there's also a reference list for further study and exploration. If there's an area that you're particularly interested in, I can give you some guidelines on where to go. There are specific assignments between the seminars, as I mentioned, like writing a couple of paragraphs. There's also a final essay or project that is partly about your own experience of going through the training, and what did you discover about your own history? How's that affecting your work with your clients? But if there's an area that you're particularly interested in, you can do some research on that and focus on that. And you get feedback from Shariona. So I really enjoy reading these papers at the end. And sometimes people get very creative, like somebody, I think it was last year, submitted a film that she had created. I wouldn't know how to do that, but it was this amazing film. So people get creative. I do want something written as well. And people also find it very integrative to do the project. And then when you've done all that, you get a certificate of completion. So there's more on the website. I think you already have the link from the emails that I've sent you. And I think I won't go into this, but here's some background about me. I've done a lot of things and I draw on them all. So I feel very blessed to have had the opportunities I've had to study and practice the things that I've been exposed to. And I do my best to bring them in to the training and really to all my classes. And I've also written 3 books, which you may be aware of. The Breath of Life, an Introduction to Craniosacral Biodynamics. It's my first book. I already showed you Spirit into Form. the text for the course. And my new book is called Birth as Shadow, Shining Light on Prenatal and Birth Experience, coming out in March, which I'm looking forward to. We're going through edits right now. So I'm going to stop sharing. And we have a bit of time left. If there's any questions or comments from anybody, I'd love to hear from you. Even if it's just, how was it for you to experience all this? But also if you have questions about the training or this time in life, anything you'd like to share. Someone had to leave early. Anything left over? Was I absolutely totally clear about everything? Does the training run each year? Well, I am planning to have it next year, probably starting in September again. It's probably going to be 7 seminars starting next year, because I have more to include. And I will probably continue it after that, but I'm not sure. I'm getting older. So I'm reevaluating what I'm doing. But I personally, I love this training so much, and people seem to benefit so much from it. And their clients seem to benefit so much from it also. So, yeah. So there's a question, what are the dates and times? And what I will do is call up the page on my website. Oops, that's not what I want. Oh. Let me share my screen and you can travel with me. I think this will work. So, can you see my screen? So this is my website, birthingyourlife.org, and you see here it says Our Journey Here Training. Click on that. And everything you could possibly want to know about this training is on this page, I hope. So, there's a video here. Oh, you can't, it looks black here. There it is. From last year, which I'll be adding in this one so you can watch it there. The team. Here's Tracy. See, you're there, Tracy. We've looked at this. Course includes all this. The schedule. So we meet from 9:45 a.m. to 6:15 p.m. UK time each day. We have a 2-hour break, usually around 1 o'clock. Varies a little bit. And you've seen the course overview. Here are the dates. So the first seminar is September 13th to 15th. Something I haven't mentioned is that I ask you to take at least one womb surround process workshop before the beginning of the training, because I found it so helpful. And if you haven't already done one with somebody, you don't have to do it with me. There are people all over the world who are offering them. I've set up one in August specifically for people applying for this training who don't have one yet. But you should apply for the training first. So these are the dates. And yeah, it says here the prerequisites. You should be some kind of practitioner, can be anything, just about working with people. And the application form is a Google form. You can see what it looks like. It does include a short autobiographical statement, about a page or so, about who you are, your life, a personal intention statement. So why do you want to take the training? 2 professional reference letters from people you've known for at least 2 years who can recommend you. Preferably people who've known you in a training or course kind of situation or through your work. We'll do an online interview once I've got your full application. And again, you need to have at least 1 room surround. And you're recommended to have regular support during the training from a psychotherapist or some kind of practitioner, preferably one familiar with pre and perinatal issues during the course, because things come up. Okay. And these are all the regular kinds of things. Occupation, education, professional qualifications, your work history, pre and perinatal psychology experience. So what have you already done, if you have? How many womb surround process workshops have you participated in? And if you're doing the one in August, you can just say, planning to do the one in August. And then I like to ask people about your experience of therapy. So how was it for you to be in therapy, whatever kind of therapy you've done? What have you done and how did you experience it? What were your challenges and rewards? And more specifically, what have been your challenges and rewards in working in group dynamics? Because we're working in a group and our dynamics do come up. A little bit about health, medical history, and helpful to be able to read and speak English and understand it because the course is conducted in English. I ask for a recent photo and yeah, if you want to submit your CV, you can do that. Oh, someone else needing to leave. So that's the application. And I don't think there's too much there. I'm just going to go back and I think I can access the course page here. No, this is something else. Oh, this is the schedule. Okay, that's not what I meant. Everything. Would you like a little more information? I think we've got a few more minutes. Anybody want more information? Yeah, okay. So I'll go to resourcing your life. I know a few people needed to leave. Sometimes it's a bit slow loading. I mentioned at the beginning, we're getting fast internet soon. I'm so looking forward to that. Okay, this is, well, it's the courses part of Resourcing Your Life. It's courses.resourcingyourlife.org. And when you log in here, it will, it's a little different for me because I'm you would actually go to my courses, which is this page. And I'm not a student, so I'm going to go a little different route. You can ignore this for a moment to get to the page for the training. But it would be on your page of my courses. You won't have all this because I'm an administrator, but this is how I find the course. So I'm going to go to this year's, the course is just finishing, but you will have a page like this. I haven't quite finished the one for next year. And you scroll down, it has all the information on it. You come to curriculum, and you can see that each seminar is listed. And there are all kinds of things available. And the first seminar, there's quite a bit that of extra because we're introducing everything. And so there's some things to look at before the seminar. And then once the seminar happens, there are also recordings of the various things we did. So there's something like that for each seminar. And it should look something like this for you as well. So we get to the end of that, and then there are some resources. So there's a reading list plus videos. There's a couple of chapters from my dissertation that was on pre and perinatal psychology. The chapters on history of pre and perinatal psychology and early memory. And this is also an article that I wrote, and there's some other links for learning more. So let me stop sharing. If you take the course, you will have access to a page like that with all that information. So how is that? I feel like I've just run a marathon. I was trying to keep it slow. How is the pacing?
I can't believe an hour and a half's gone.
Well, if you
Time's a
take the
funny
training,
thing.
if you take the training, it might be like that. You have such a good time that, they say time flies when you're having fun. Great. Well, yeah, we're coming to the end. And I see several people had to leave. They've left their thank yous. Really appreciate all the information. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'll be buying the book. Take care, everyone. So, any final words from anyone? Do you feel like that's enough for now? Yeah. Well, thank you. And yeah, I'd love to see you in a Wilms around in the training. There's just a few places left in the training. So if you're interested, let me know and apply. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.